Okay, hello folks. My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. How you guys doing? So, quick and to the point today. The fit has hit the Shan there in Israel and the Gaza Strip. And by fit, I mean shit, because it's gone completely fucking bonkers over there. There is now a full-blown war, which is more like a slaughter, but we'll get into that. So, what in the hell happened? Well, as I'm sure everybody out there is aware, Israelis and Palestinians have a very sordid history, and I'm not going to really be spending this stream talking too much about the history behind what's going on over there. Suffice to say that the Gaza Strip is what has been described as the world's largest open air prison. And that's essentially what it is. It's a very small area. It's about 25 miles long and between 5 to 8 miles wide at certain points. Not a very big area, and roughly 2 million people are jammed into this little tiny area there. So, kind of been like that for a little while now, and there's a lot of animosity between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and a lot of bad blood. Things have kind of escalated into a straight up hot war over this past weekend, with thousands and thousands of people being killed hourly as we speak. There's bombs going off, there's airstrikes, people's homes being destroyed, all kinds of stuff. Entire families getting wiped out. It's pretty horrible. It's pretty crazy shit going on right now. So a very, very brief recap of current events is in order. What the hell happened, huh? This past, I think it was Saturday when this happened. The Palestinians, more accurately Hamas, which is the governing body of the Gaza Strip, they launched a surprise attack against Israel. And it was a coordinated attack, a pretty big one this time. So it's not the first time that there has been open warfare between, obviously, the Palestinians and the Israelis. No, this happens every 5 to 8 years or so. And this time, though, this was a pretty big attack. And the difference is that the Israelis kind of got caught with their pants down this time. So what exactly happened? A large number of Palestinian fighters. They're still kind of not really able to see how many exactly there are, but looks like thousands of them, right? At least 1,000 of them, put it that way, participated in this attack. They came from the land and the sea and the air. Now, when you say this, it makes it kind of sound like, oh, well, they have like fighter jets or something. No, that's not what it was. The Palestinians used paragliders to fly over the fences and attack. And then apparently there was also a boat. They had like one boat, which could have been a fishing boat or something. Not really seeing a lot of details about that. But there was a very large coordinated attack, and they basically broke out of the confines of the Gaza Strip, attacked a couple of border checkpoints at a military base, and went out into the wider country, raided this music festival where apparently they killed 200 people. Not good at all. A lot of those people were young people, and went on to take around 50 hostages or so. All in all, in the initial raid, somewhere around 1,000 Israelis were brutally murdered. Up to around 700 of them were civilians. So they went after soldiers and they went after police, but very large number of these casualties in the initial raid were civilians. and a large number of those were women and children. And we know this because a lot of the hostages that they took were women. They've been showing videos of them, posting videos of them basically parading these hostages through the streets, where people in the crowds are beating them, spitting on them. There's one video, which I'm not going to show any of these videos here. You can find them if you want. Go on Twitter, go on TikTok, whatever. You can find them. But there's a video that really kind of stuck it with me, where it was one particular woman that looked like she was dead, but apparently she was alive, who had both of her legs broken, and one of her legs was kind of going in the wrong direction. As she's in the back of a pickup truck being driven around, and as it goes by, a guy spits on her. And you're like, Jesus Christ, that's pretty freaking horrible, man. So, yeah. There's also videos of Israeli police getting blown away. One particular group where they were trying to get their gear on, they were taken completely by surprise. And they were trying to get their gear together. And they just got annihilated. So, pretty gnarly stuff. We here in the West, in the United States, don't really come into contact with the horrors of war very much, unless you're a soldier or something. But the average person in the United States does not really encounter this kind of brutality on a daily basis, and to see it actually happen out there, and then to see people celebrating it, is horrid. And it makes you remember just how terrible warfare is and how brutal people can be. Pretty horrible stuff there. There's also a large number of rocket attacks. That seems to be the main method of attack. These are rockets that have a range of a couple of miles, which are smuggled into the Gaza Strip from Egypt and through a network of underground tunnels. And they're very much a terror weapon is what they are, because they're not accurate. So they don't really have much in the way of guidance systems. They just sort of point them in a general direction and then fire them off. And maybe sometimes they hit a military target, but more often than not, they come down in a residential area and kill civilians. And these sorts of rockets have been the main weapon that the Palestinians have had for decades at this point. I'm sure you've seen the video of the Iron Dome intercepting these rockets. You know, it looks like something out of a Command and Conquer video game where, you know, the rockets shoot out and then another interceptor rocket fires up and blows it up. That's what that is. So apparently the rocket attacks have just been continuous for the last 5 days. So they must have been storing these up for a long time. Israel's response is nearly equally barbaric. Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered a general siege of Gaza. So what does that mean? Cut off all the food, all the water, cut off the electricity. I think they limit electricity to just a couple of hours a day, if that. That is basically a war crime, is what that is. You're not, when it comes to civilians, you're not supposed to do that. But this time, nobody cares. He's just doing it anyway. This time, it's sort of the people that would normally be protesting these things are staying silent. Other countries that normally would be interceding here are not saying anything. Even the United States, President Biden has basically just kind of given his blessing. There's lots of video of senators and things, people like Marco Rubio and stuff, saying it's time to slaughter these people, but we won't talk too much about that. I'm planning on doing another video about reactions to this in a couple of days. I'm in the process of gathering materials for it, getting screenshots, links, that kind of thing. Suffice to say that, yeah, no one is standing and trying to stop the Israelis from just basically engaging in a actual real genocide this time. And that's what's really going on. They're essentially, at this point, just flattening entire neighborhoods with fighter jets from the sky. There's, as of yet, has not been a ground invasion, but they're getting ready for it. They're mobilizing somewhere around 300,000 reservists to come out for an actual ground invasion where they're going to go and occupy every square inch of the Gaza Strip. Now, why is it that the Israelis are able to pull up 300,000 reservists like that? It's because military service is mandatory in Israel. So most citizens spend about 2 years or so in the military. Once you turn 18, you have to like spend a couple of mandatory, and it makes sense if you lived in a country where you were surrounded on all sides by enemies. So that's kind of pretty crazy. Now, something to keep in mind is that, well, the Gaza Strip is probably the third most populous, like densely populated area on Earth. And so every time a bomb drops and flattens a building, that's destroying the homes of hundreds and hundreds of people. So if you see these videos out there, I'm not going to show anything because it's pretty screwed up and heartbreaking, and yeah, I don't want to. We'll save that for another stream, but if you've seen any of these videos or photos of just complete decimation going in the streets there, that's what's going on. It's, people are being displaced. Hundreds of thousands of people are being... So far, roughly 250,000 people have been displaced. That means their homes have just been completely destroyed. So there's... And remember, it's a 25-mile by 4-mile or 8-mile, depending. It kind of flares out on the map area with 2 million people in it. So that's a very, very small area. 25 miles by 10 miles. Not a big place. That's like smaller than the city of Los Angeles. Like it's really small. 2 million people in there. So when you start carpet bombing in there, like Israel seems to be doing, who knows how many people are actually dead. They've said confirmed somewhere around 750 civilians. But it's way more than that. We just don't know at this point. And really the Israeli government is not giving a shit about how many people actually die this time. They're just... In fact, there was a quote that came from Netanyahu exactly. I think it was Netanyahu. The quote was, they're not concerned about accuracy. Like at other times, at other points in history when they've had these conflicts, they would at least try, at least the official policy was that they would at least try to limit civilian casualties, and this time they straight up said we're not going to. They're going for damage. What they want to do is they want to completely flatten the Gaza Strip, make it uninhabitable, and who knows what the end game is after that. I'm assuming they want to move everybody out of it. I don't know where these people are going to go. Are they going to move them to the West Bank? Who knows? Are they going to deport them? Are they going to force them to go to Egypt or Jordan or Syria? I don't know. But I don't see how... I don't know. It looks like the goal is to just completely raze the entire Gaza Strip and kill as many people as possible, which looks fucking horrible. The thing is that there's nowhere for these people to go currently. So if you think, well, what would you do in this situation, right? Shit is hitting the fan right now because some crazy fucking militants have gone nuts. And, well, I guess you can't really call Hamas crazy militants because they're the actual governing body in the Gaza Strip. So think of it like this. Your country declares a war that you may or may not be involved with. Let's say that you're not. Let's say you're an objector, right? You have nothing to do with their stupid fucking war. But then your country loses the war and gets invaded. What the hell do you do? All you want to do is survive. Well, now imagine that's you. Well, you would think, okay, I'll just get the hell out of there. I'll just leave. I'll be I'll pack up, jump in the car and bail or whatever, right? Well, they can't do that. There's no place for these people to go. There's only 2 border crossings. The entire area is surrounded with walls and fences, right? Border walls and fences. And especially now on the Israeli side, there's no way. What are you going to do? Go to Israel? No. They're not going to let you in. They'll probably shoot you. Well, Egypt is not letting anybody in either. because they've closed off there. That's the only other legal border crossing. There's one border crossing into Israel and then one into Egypt, and the crossing into Egypt is now closed because they don't want hundreds of thousands of refugees, so they've closed it off. So where are you supposed to go? Remember, 25 miles by 4 miles, right? Or by 8 miles, excuse me, at its widest. Where the hell are you supposed to go? I guess you just sort of take shelter best you can. Hope a bomb doesn't fall on you, right? So these people are screwed. They're absolutely screwed. Another thing to remember is that roughly half of the population of Palestine is under the age of 18. So they're kids, right? Half of them are children. I mean, imagine you're 14, 15 years old, middle of a fucking war, bombs and shit falling around. Your parents both get killed, even if you have parents, right? What the hell are you supposed to do? Nothing. You shit your pants and hope you don't die. That's what you'd be doing. So that's what's going on right now. The pure, unadulterated terror is absolutely mind-blowing, and something that we just really cannot appreciate here in the West. We can't appreciate it. It just is not something that we can even begin to identify with. Someone who's, no, it's not even, I can't even comprehend how terrible this must all be for these people, right? So, shit is hitting the fan there. Some things to keep in mind, because what we're seeing now here, I mean, I can't talk about the experience of those people there. I have no frame of reference, but I can talk about how it's being perceived, and I can tell you that it's not being perceived very well here in the West. The Palestinians are almost universally being painted as villains in this conflict, which in some respects is somewhat deserved. I mean, they did engage in a sneak attack on Israel and target civilians. So I want to say that generally, when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, my sympathies lie most of the time with the Palestinians. They have traditionally. They have lain with the Palestinians, and the reason why I say this is because Israel holds all the power in this situation for years and years. The Palestinians are most definitely the oppressed people in this conflict, right? Now, seeing women and children being murdered and dragged around in trucks with a woman with both of her legs broken and hostages and stuff like seeing all this shit happening, and 200 people getting killed at a music concert, that kind of thing, makes it really hard to try to have sympathy for them. I'm not going to lie, and I know a lot of the people on the left here are probably going to get pissed at me for saying that, but it's really, really hard to feel for these people when their elected government engaged in these crimes. And that's what it is. So you got to remember, Hamas is the actual governing body of the West, or of the Gaza Strip. Now, the West Bank is governed by a different group called Fatah, right? So they don't have anything to do with this. Although I have seen a few reports that there's been some actual fighting in the West Bank as well. But from what I understand, the group in the West Bank, the ruling body in the West Bank, it's called Fatah. They are the enemies of of Hamas, basically political enemies. And it's not the same way that we have here, where it's just Republican, Democrat. It's not like that at all. They're actual, murdering each other kind of enemies. There was there was a Gaza civil war back in 2007. So, see, this is what happened, right? So for years and years, it was the PLO was in charge of a unified Palestine. Gaza Strip, which is on the west end, right, of Israel, that is bordered by the Mediterranean Sea. And then on the other side, bisected by Israel, is the West Bank. West Bank is where you keep hearing about the settlers coming in. So what's going on in the West Bank is that basically a bunch of Israeli settlers are showing up and engaging in land grabs. And they're doing shit like they'll go in and they'll burn down somebody's house. Like a Palestinian will have a house. They'll go and they'll harass them and like beat them up and then light their house on fire. Shit like that. And then what'll happen is that the police will be there and the cops will just be waiting, watching. And if the Palestinian family tries to defend themselves, then the cops will step in and arrest them and say, oh, well, we just saw you, like, fighting this guy. And it's like, well, that guy just came and fucking set my house on fire. And the cops won't do shit. They will just sit, and it's really is a slow motion genocide is what's going on there, right? So that's the West Bank, where you have these illegal Israeli settlements where they go in, and it's extremely sleazy. And it's like, but they're run by a different group. They're run by a group called Fatah. And Fatah apparently is dedicated to a peace, peaceful protest, that kind of thing. And it's like, so at least, but I don't know. And then I'm reading some other shit saying that, well, they started as a fucking terrorist group also, so it's like whatever. But they're not part of this. They're not the West Bank. They have nothing. Well, I don't know if they have nothing to do with it, but they didn't engage in the attack like Hamas did. Hamas is the group that runs the Gaza Strip. And remember, Hamas was elected. So in 2006, it used to be like the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Authority, I think is what they're called. What's the PLO stand for? Just so I know that I'm not talking out of my ass here. Stand for... Was it the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, right? That was the group that Yasser Arafat used to be the leader of way back in the day, right? Before he died of cancer or whatever. Although, so yeah, it's pretty fucked up shit. So then, so they become basically elected in 2006. And then this causes a sort of civil war in the Gaza Strip. A civil war between Fatah and Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni fundamentalist group. Basically, they're terrorists. They're a terrorist group is what they are. And they, but I mean, can you still call them a terrorist group when they're elected as the actual, like when they become the actual governing body? Are they still a terrorist group? I don't know. But then you see shit like this. It's like, I would say that what they did this past weekend kind of sounds like a fucking terrorist group to me. But anyway, so they're the legit governing body though of the Gaza Strip. And what happened was that after they had their little, they were elected and then there was a civil war there, the Israeli government basically decided to blockade the Gaza Strip. So since 2006, they've been blockading it. They haven't been allowing people in or out. They've been stopping trade. Exports in the Gaza Strip are at 2% of what they were before the blockade. So keep that in mind. Large population, 2 million people. It's pretty damn large. Half of them are under 18. 70% of them are unemployed. So everybody's young, poor, and there's no future for them. Here's the other thing. They also have the population in Gaza is highly, highly educated. There's something like 25 universities in Gaza. So it's like these people aren't just sitting around doing nothing. They're not just, no. They're doing the best they can to increase their station and help themselves. They're not idle, put it that way, right? They're not sitting around like, no. They're actually before the blockade. I mean, they're actually somewhat, I wouldn't say prosperous, but we're way better off than they are now. 2%. To remember, think about what if in the United States there was a blockade and we were exporting 2% of what we export now. 2% of what we exported in 07. Think about that. What if you had 70% unemployment in the United States? Think about that. I mean, Jesus Christ. Like, think about the kind of like ridiculous violence you would see in the streets, right? And there, I mean, shit, we have high inflation and young kids go on fucking like shoplifting rampage attacks at fucking Targets and shit, and like fucking empty malls and stuff. That should happen at my local mall. My local mall here, like one of those fucking like huge ass, kind of an aside here, but you have these sort of large like shoplifting attack kind of things where 50 people show up and just fucking gang mob a store, steal everything in sight, and then they go and they sell it on Amazon or something. Like that should happen in my local mall here. Like, I mean, think about, and this is just like with some slight inflation. Right now in the United States, unemployment is like the lowest it's ever fucking been. Right? So imagine if 70% of the people were unemployed. Imagine the kind of like crazy fucking lawlessness we would see here, right? And that's what these people have to deal with every fucking day, right? And it's not just this. It's not just the fact that they're all poor, and that it's the fact that they're not free. These are people that on a daily basis put up with abuse after abuse after abuse. Israeli soldiers and police, just deciding to come in and beat people up or murder them. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's the thing about it, right? Here in the United States, police shoot us too, right? If you come across a cop and whatever, for whatever fucking reason, blows you away, especially if you're not, a white person, you can get shot for driving while black or something, right? That happens in the United States on a daily basis too. But what happens when it goes too far is that sometimes the police actually do get held accountable. George Floyd, for example. People that murdered George Floyd were actually held accountable for a change. People are allowed to protest here. Now, if you protest in Israel, they'll kill you. Right? That's, no, it's like it. And the thing is, it happens all the time. All the time. There'll be people that will try to peacefully protest, and then, the police or the soldiers or whatever will murder 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them over and over. Something around 200 people in this year in the West Bank have been killed by police and soldiers. 200 people. Think about that. Think about it. Were there 200 police shootings in the United States this year? Now, there's probably a couple of hundred a year. But in an area as small as the West Bank, I mean, the West Bank isn't that big of an area either. Like, can you think about, like, that's sort of like if there were 200 police shootings just in like Arizona. Like, just to give a comparison, right? Does that happen here? No. So you gotta, that's the thing, is that these are people, it's not that they're poor. It's not that they're idle. It's the fact that they're not free, that they're actively being suppressed and oppressed, I guess is the actual word. Their homes taken away. Bulldozers and shit come in and just like bulldozing your house. And then there's nothing you can do about it. And that's the real shitty thing. That's another thing that happens in the West Bank as well. Someone will have a house that they've been living in for 50 years. And then an illegal settler shows up, decides that he wants his house, starts harassing him and shit, gets a court order to like say, okay, this land belongs to me now. And then the Palestinian has no legal recourse. They say, okay, they show up, oh, we got a court order saying this is our land. Bye-bye, you're evicted. Good luck fighting it. That's the other thing, okay? Because they don't have equal rights. So the court always sides with the settler. And then a fucking bulldozer comes and bulldozes somebody's house down. And that shit happens all the fucking time. All the time. Story after story after story after story. Right? Of people getting just fucking... It's oppression. It's oppression the likes of which we don't have in this country. We haven't even... I mean, it's like the worst stories that you can imagine during the Jim Crow South. Like it's like that. Entire families being murdered, people being thrown in jail for fucking really shitty reasons. And then also systematically every 4 or 5 years, planes show up and just fucking drop bombs on everybody. That's what's fucking going on there, right? So it kind of makes you wonder. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, I can't see. That's the thing. It's like I'm not trying to make excuses for any of this. I'm not trying to justify any of it. I'm not saying that anything that happened this weekend is okay. Not saying that at all. What I am saying is it's no wonder it happened. Right? I am not surprised it happened. I'm surprised that it took so long for it to actually happen. And here's the thing about it is that Israel could end this. They could end it at any time, right? By giving the people there full rights. They could end it, but they don't. And, we could get into the history about why and, the Yom Kippur War and all this other shit. And then I guess there was like a mosque, the what's the word for that? Aleska Mosque? There was I can't remember exactly how to pronounce that, but there was some, back in like the 90s, there was like this massacre at a mosque. Like Israeli soldiers opened fire and killed like 17 people. And then, then you have like suicide bombings on trains and shit. That was happening like around the turn of the century. There was like an entire thing with like suicide bombers. I can't remember. I mean, there's all kinds of history, and it's like, okay, you can keep going back and back and back and back, all the way back to 1947 and when the country was formed. Whatever. Who cares? Is what I have to say. What I say now is like, well, all right, all that shit happened. What are you guys going to do to fix it? Right? Who cares? Do something about what's going on now. And it really has been the policy, the official policy of the Israeli government is basically a slow motion genocide. So that's why these people are desperate. I mean, you got to think, most of the time people don't go into battle with the idea that they're going to die, right? You would say so, right? I mean, I'm not a soldier. I've never been in the army, but I assume that when you are in the army, one of the things that you want to do is to not die when you go off to war. You want to kill the enemy and then survive. Isn't that how wars usually work? So why would these guys who obviously, when they went on this attack, knew that they were going to die? Like, because they don't have a chance. That's the thing. And they have a chance to do a surprise attack. But they don't have any chance at all to win the wider war. They must have known this was going to happen, right? They must have known that as soon as they went out and started fucking massacring people, that bombs were going to start falling from the sky, right? So why do they do it? It's because they're desperate. Like I said, imagine this is where you lived. Imagine you lived in the Gaza Strip. The same 25-mile stretch of land that you were never allowed to leave. That you've born there, you've grown up there since the last, 2006? How long ago was that? 17 years? The last 17 years, you weren't even allowed to, like, leave it legally. They call this the world's largest open-air prison, because that's kind of what it is. These people are basically in prison camps, right? Certain parts of it are actually refugee camps. There's parts which are built up in their cities and stuff, and then there's other parts that are actual refugee camps. Like, still, after 50 years, wouldn't you get a little desperate? I would get desperate. And also keep in mind that, okay, well, these are all kids. They're all under 18. Well, if this is all you had, all you've ever known, you've spent your entire life just getting shit on left and right, watching your neighbors get killed and die, watching everything your family, your friends have get taken away. That's a very, very easy formula for radicalization. So you wonder, it makes you wonder, well, Hamas being a fucking terrorist organization, they're able to radicalize people so easily. It's like, well, how? Why are so many people willing to throw their lives away for, if that's what you had, wouldn't you do it too? This is what you got to think about. It's like, well, I'm either going to die sitting here waiting for fucking hope that it just doesn't exist, or I'm going to go out fighting. How many of you would choose to go down fighting? Right. So keep that in mind when you watch the news or whatever, and you see Senator Marco Rubio say that, oh, we need to just slaughter the Palestinians because they're animals. It's like, they're not animals, man. These are normal, ordinary people, just like everybody else. Right. And if it was you, you would be doing the same thing. Okay. So I don't know, man. But that's the thing. It's like, so yeah, generally my sympathies lie with them. But I cannot sit here. I can't support anyone who condones this kind of violence. I'm sorry. I'm not. That's where I draw the line. And it's like, well, if this is what you guys are going to do, if you're going to take your goodwill that people are giving you and you're going to squander it by attacking civilians, it's a bridge too far. Here's the thing about wars, right? Civilians die in war. It's unavoidable. That's what wars are. There's never been a war where civilians did not die. And we understand that this happens whenever we engage in war, right? Women and children die. Innocent people die. People who have had nothing to do with the war whatsoever get caught in the crossfire, and they get killed. Entire families get wiped out, and that's what happens during a war. Don't think that the United States is not engaged in this either, because they have. And every time they drop bombs on some country, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, wherever, Vietnam, going all the way back, every single war, World War I, World War II, Korea, all of them, civilians get killed. The difference is you don't specifically target them. And we don't. At least our official policy of the United States is to not drop bombs on civilians. It happens because bombs and rockets and all these things are not, as smart as they make them, they're not foolproof. Things, it may increase the chances of it hitting the target when there's a computer-guided system on the missile or whatever. But shit happens. Things go wacky. It misses. They get the wrong target. They blow up the wrong thing. It happens even when they have things like targeted drone strikes, where there's an actual guy with a fucking Nintendo like joypad and shit. He has like an NES Advantage or whatever. Right. That's a joystick for you kids who are young. For those guys who don't, for you young kids out there, if you don't know what a joystick is, it's like a thing you play Street Fighter with. That's a joystick. Even with those things, even with those manned drones where someone's controlling it at all given times, they still screw up and they get the wrong people. We understand that. But we don't target civilians on purpose. That is not the official policy of the United States or any nation, right? These guys, not so much. That's the difference when you terrorists and an actual governing body. Terrorists will target civilians. Al-Qaeda targeted civilians. ISIS targeted civilians. Why? Because they want to spread terror. That's the weapon. That's the message that they're saying, is that if you do what we say, or we're going to kill everybody. We won't just kill the soldiers. We will specifically go out and kill you and you'll never be safe. That's what terrorism is all about. That's the difference between terrorism and an actual, military strike. Military, when there's a war, they don't waste bullets and bombs on civilians. They don't waste them on that. Why? Because it doesn't fulfill your goal, your military goal. You want to take out the enemy and his capacity to wage war. What's dropping a bunch of bombs on women and children and teachers and schools and hospitals and shit gonna do, right? How's that gonna no, it's a waste of resources is what it is. And then the other thing is, well, you don't want to, I mean, part of winning a war is winning hearts and minds, but that's a discussion for another time. Yeah, well, these people are desperate. Yeah, well, are they desperate enough to sell their souls like this? And it's making me really hard to have sympathy for these guys. And then you see videos of people celebrating this stuff, and you see videos of them dragging people around, and then various videos around the country of people at rallies and stuff celebrating it. Celebrating the fact that these guys went out and killed civilians. I know a lot of leftists out there are gonna poo-poo me and say shit well, they have a right to defend themselves and blah 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 blah. And okay, yeah, that's great, and they are the oppressed people here and all that stuff, but it's not right. What they're doing is not right. I can be against them, I can be against the Israeli government, and I can be against Hamas at the same time, right? Because I refuse to support terror, the tactics of terrorism, and actual terrorists, and frankly, religious fundamentalists too, which is fucking what Hamas are. Hamas is fucking religious fundamentalists. That's what they are. That's how they started. They're an offshoot of the fucking Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, these are the fucking people that if it was up to them, women would be forced to wear hijabs walking around, and forced marriages and that kind of thing, and throwing people off buildings if you're gay, stuff like that. All the shit that happens in Afghanistan with the Taliban, and the same kind of thing that happens in Saudi Arabia, even though I think these are different. I think one of them are Shia, and then I think the Hamas is Shia, if I remember, and then the other guys are Sunni, right, or something like that. I don't know, but I know they're the different, the sectarian divide there. But still, it's funny how fundamentalists all seem to agree on the exact same shit. It's so no, I don't know if I'm down with these guys either. Even if they are, yeah, okay, they're fighting for the oppressed people. Well, they kind of seem like assholes to me. So I think now, yeah, this means I don't know. My official stance is I am now neutral in this whole thing. It's easy for me to say that because I'm just a guy out there on the internet. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't have any friends or family that live there on either side. I'm not affected by this whatsoever. So I can take any kind of moral high ground or stance that I want, and I understand that lots of people out there can't do that. Lots of people actually do have a dog in the fight. They either have relatives there, or they have roots there, or something like that, or they're directly related, or they may even have lived there at one time or whatever. And these people will have a very strong stance on it. And you know what? I'm not going to give anybody shit for taking one side or the other. All I'm going to say is I'm not taking either side, because it looks to me that both sides in this truly are horrible. I will not support any government that engages in genocide, which is what the Israeli government has been and is clearly doing now. Especially now when they're just bombing indiscriminately. Sorry, that's bullshit. When they're cutting power to hospitals, when they're cutting out all the food and water. Something like 90% of the water in the Gaza Strip is undrinkable. It's highly polluted. So these people depend on Israel for all of their water. And now that there's a general siege, they're not getting any water, they're not getting any food, no medicine. People that think there's people with going to the hospital, if there's no power at the hospital, then they can't treat anyone. Especially now that there's bombs dropping all over the place. Imagine that you had a house there, bomb drops, your family gets caught in it. Thankfully they're alive, but they're in critical condition. And so you bring them to the fucking hospital, and the hospital doesn't have any electricity. How are they going to do surgery and shit if there's no electricity? That's why that shit's a war crime. And nobody's saying anything about it because it's such a politically charged thing. And that's the other thing. You go all over Reddit and like YouTube and all that, and everybody's got a fucking, 2 cents or whatever. Everybody's got the solution. And whatever you say, it's always wrong, and somebody's always like calling you a scumbag or whatever because you're supporting the side that they don't like. And it's like, man, these people are real people, right? They're not just another little weapon in our culture war. These are actual lives, actual real people's lives that we're talking about here. These aren't just numbers on a computer screen. These aren't just pixels in a video game. These are actual real people who are dying left and right now. And they deserve more than to just be used as props for us to bicker and complain and like moan and bitch about. They're not pawns in our ridiculous fucking sectarian arguments that we have in the United States. And I refuse to treat them as such. So I'm not going to engage in any debates or arguments with anybody when it comes to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. I'm not doing it. Sorry. You can say whatever the fuck you want to say, and that's fine. I'm going to say what I want to say. And if you don't like it, you can kiss my giant hairy butt cheeks. I'm serious. If anybody watches this video and you have some shit that you want to say to me, fuck off. I'm not interested. I don't care. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm an asshole, you think I should go to hell for what I'm saying, then just leave. Leave. Don't watch my videos. Because I'm not engaging in that shit. I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Because these people don't deserve that. Right? These people don't exist for you or I to use them so that we can just bitch and moan and complain about Trump or whatever. No, fuck that. That's no. But they're real people with real lives, and they deserve respect. The other thing is like, okay, solutions, right? I don't have any solutions. My solution is Israel needs to give them equal rights. How do you encourage them to do that? Right? Because, there's people talking about one state solution, 2-state solution, whatever. I don't know. Whatever. All I can say is just do something. Right? Just do something. How long, that's the other thing. Like, how long has this shit been going on? 50 years? It's been as long as I can remember. There's been violence there. I remember reading about this when I was in high school in the 90s and hearing the exact same kinds of stories. Soldiers opening fire on children because they threw rocks at them, for example. People showing up at the hospital with both their legs broken. Stuff like that. On the other side, people going in, Palestinians, and like suicide bombing themselves on buses and trains and shit. Imagine if you live there. The Israeli people that just live there, minding their own business, trying to just live their day-to-day life. They don't deserve that shit either. You get on a bus, it might be the last thing you ever do. Imagine that. Imagine you go to the shopping mall. Imagine here you're at the mall. You go get a boba or something. You're drinking your fucking Thai iced tea boba, whatever. You go buy a shirt or something. You walk out. Suddenly there's a huge fucking explosion. Your wife or daughter is like dead. And it's like, imagine that shit. How can anybody live like that, right? How can anybody live on both sides there? How can anybody live with the constant fear and anxiety that shit like that is going to happen anywhere you go? The same thing on the Palestinian side. How can anybody live just being completely oppressed like that, not knowing when the next time one of your friends or family are going to get shot and killed for some stupid fucking reason? I want to show you guys something. This happened. This is a while ago. This actually happened. God, how long ago was this? 2021. Okay. This happened in Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is actually kind of divided between the Israelis and Palestinians. It's like each side is claiming it as their capital city, and that's why it was such a big fucking deal when Donald Trump moved the ambassadorship there, or whatever. It was like he was endorsing the Palestinians. Here's the thing I found here. Israeli forces beat and tear gas Palestinian runners after East Jerusalem race. Now, I'm not going to read this entire thing. You can check it out if you want. This is the Middle East Eye. Check out the article if you want. There's an actual video here. These are guys. These are protesters. Basically, it was a protest, but they were doing a race, as in a foot race, as in they were running. Right. So that is the definition of a peaceful protest. Right. They weren't throwing bottles and cans or bottle of cocktails. They weren't even standing around with signs, chanting or anything like that, blocking traffic, whatever. They were in a foot race. Each shirt has the number 7,850 on the back. Right. Which was, if I believe right, that was the number, which activists say is the number of Palestinians under threat of forcible displacement in Jerusalem, i.e. people coming and bulldozing down their houses and shit, kicking them out, evicting them, that kind of thing, which is a thing that happens in Jerusalem. You know, that's another thing. Imagine you're just living there. Some guy shows up and just jacks your house, has a court order, evicts you, takes over your house. That's what's going on over there too. Just Palestinians being just forcibly evicted from their houses, having their houses burned down, shit like that. So then after the race, a bunch of cops show up. There's video here of this. It's only 21 seconds long. Cops show up, start shooting people with rubber bullets. The rubber bullets, by the way, are basically steel balls that are coated in rubber. So they are not exactly non-lethal. They're called less than lethal. As in, if you get shot in the face with one of those, you will die. But, you know, you get shot in the stomach or something, you might actually live. Stuff like that. That's what these people are doing. It was a race. And then suddenly the police come up, start beating the shit out of everyone, throwing fucking, look at this guy got shot in the leg. Right, you can see it. Are we going to actual X here? There we go. This guy got shot in the leg because of this. There you go. Big ass fucking bruise there, right? Their crime was protesting. That's what it was. That was a protest. So that these people could live free. Do you remember this happening? Of course you don't remember this happening. You know why you don't remember this happening? Because they don't report on stuff like that in the West. They don't. This was not on the news anywhere. It wasn't in a newspaper. It wasn't on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. Nothing like that. Stephen Colbert didn't make fun of it that night. The racers were not on talk shows and stuff talking about it. You know why? Because no one gives a shit in the West, in the United States, in Britain, in Europe. No one cares. Because this kind of thing has been going on for years and years and years and years. And it's incredibly common. No one gives a shit. So what's the fucking solution? The solution is give these people fucking rights. That's the solution. Give them full rights, full citizenship. Make one state, make two states, I don't know. Do fucking something. End this. That's the goddamn solution, right? I'm sure, you know, yeah, okay, history, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a fuck. Do something. I don't know, folks. It's fucked up. It makes you appreciate where you live, what you have. The freedoms that you have, no matter how fucked up you think our country is. It's like, wow. And this also shows you, you know, at least this shit's not happening there, but it also shows you how bad it can be if the wrong people are in charge, if things are allowed to deteriorate when hatred and fear runs your country, when people hate each other. That's the only way that this kind of thing happens. The only way this kind of thing it develops and happens is when people actually hate each other, when hate just sits there and festers and festers, and people dehumanize each other to the point where they just don't care anymore. Then they're willing to go out and just murder random fucking strangers that did nothing to them for no reason. Right? So, it's all fucked up, folks.
Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.